In this final chapter of our story, involving Ned, Joe, Paul, and Jill, we analyze the role played by stress, arousal, and anxiety on our body and how it affects our participation and performance in physical activity. As we know from previous encounters with Paula, she is very modest and feels the need to self-handicap her sporting ability in order to stay out of the spotlight. Arousal is a necessary ingredient in sports performance, although its levels can whether facilitate or hinder the execution of specific skills or tasks. It can be described as a degree of energy released and the intensity of readiness of the performer. Arousal levels vary between individuals and they respond to a different stimuli. Athletes who have a high disposition towards anxiety require less arousal than those who have a low disposition towards anxiety. Paula demonstrates high levels of arousal. As her event draws closer, she experiences an increase in heart rate and core temperature, which results in her body producing more sweat than normal. And she also feels dehydrated, even though she is hydrated. According to Jones and Hardy 1990, stress has been identified as a crucial aspect of sport. It influences the performance as well as the social functioning. Increased anxiety and burnout are symptoms associated to an inability to deal with stress in sports as well as decreased self-esteem and performance, which are demonstrated by Paula when she self-handicaps herself at the beginning of the race. Anxiety is a negative emotional state characterized by nervousness, worry, and apprehension. It is also the negative effect of stress. Extreme anxiety disrupts and unsettles our behavior by lowering our concentration and affecting our muscles. Paula demonstrates high anxiety levels when she unconsciously adjusts her uniform while continually complaining that the uniform is too revealing. Her anxiety levels are increased further when she is reminded that this will be Jill's final race and they are expected to win. Anxiety can be broken down into state anxiety, which is characterized by the heightened emotions which are developed in response to a fear or danger of a situation. State anxiety can contribute to a degree of physical and mental paralysis, preventing performance of a task or where performance is severely affected. This is demonstrated during the race when Paula uncharacteristically misses strokes and is reminded by Jill to get ahead in the game. It can also be broken down into trait anxiety, which refers to characteristics of an individual and their personality. Trait anxiety varies according to how individuals have conditioned themselves in response to and how they manage stress. People with high levels of trait anxiety are often quite easily stressed and anxious. This is demonstrated when Paula becomes extremely worried that she would let Jill and the team down due to her lack of ability and experience in big events.
The HPA axis is a group of responses to stress by the hypothalamus, pituitary glands, and the adrenal glands. So as a result of stress, the hypothalamus responds to this stress by releasing corticotropin-releasing hormones. This hormone then binds to the CRF receptors on the anterior pituitary gland. From this gland, adrenocorticotropic hormone is then released. This hormone then binds to receptors on the adrenal cortex and stimulates the adrenal release of cortisol. Cortisol creates a dramatic rise in blood levels of glucose, fatty acids, and amino acids, promoting gluconeogenesis. This helps the body to save glucose for the brain. It also enhances the sympathetic nervous system's vasoconstrictive effects, resulting in the rise of blood pressure along with the increase of circulatory efficiency. This helps nutrients to be distributed around the body. As Paula became more aroused and stressed, her cortisol levels would rise, provoking elevation of blood pressure, heart rate, and the body's metabolism. This topic of the body's response to stress could be seen as being closely aligned and appropriate to the theories of anxiety and performance. 5 theories will be discussed. Drive theory. In essence, this theory hypothesizes that a high level of arousal will positively impact performance when the skill is performed by a proficient learner, but will negatively impact performance when the learner is a novice. So in Paula's case, the increase of poor rowing technique is due to the arousal, and this will result in an overall poor performance. However, this is not an appropriate theory to explain the case of Paula, as Paula does have an appropriate skill level and is displayed towards the end of the race, towards minute 6. Something else is causing Paula's lack of performance. Next we have the inverted U theory. This hypothesizes that an increase in arousal has a positive effect on performance until a certain point, after which continuous arousal detrimentally affects performance. Perhaps Paula was already at her optimum level of arousal when she was on the bank drinking her coffee, and not thinking about this being Jill's last race, and looking at all the other rowers and their size, and thinking about her lack of experience. Potentially, it was these thoughts that increased Paula's arousal above her optimum levels, and induced stress and worry, decreasing her overall performance. The individual zone of optimal functioning proposes that there are individual differences in the way people react to anxiety. Some tend to succeed when anxiety is low, while others succeed while anxiety is high. It is obvious that in this situation, Paula is struggling because her anxiety is too high. She needs to develop strategies that can control her anxiety. It appears that perhaps she needs a greater challenge for her to focus on the task at hand, and to drown out distractions and other negative thoughts. This would help to decrease her arousal and bring back down her arousal to optimal levels. The strategy can be seen when she focuses on the rower in front and counts to herself and psychs herself up for the increasing cadence of rowing. The multi-dimensional anxiety theory. This theory hypothesizes a powerful negative linear relationship between cognitive state anxiety and performance, and a less powerful inverted U relationship between somatic anxiety and performance. Within the story, the higher Paula's anxiety, the greater the mistakes, and when her arousal and anxiety levels decrease, so her performance increases. This shows a relationship between the cognitive state anxiety and performance. When Paula starts getting her act together, it states that her muscles were still burning, and this in turn shows a less powerful inverted U relationship between somatic anxiety and performance, being as her muscles are burning but her performance is still increasing. The catastrophe theory. Similar to the inverted U theory, however, when arousal goes above the optimum levels, they really lose the plot, and it takes much effort to bring the arousal back under control.
The reversal theory was developed by Apter in the mid-1970s. It presents an analysis of everyday life experiences by focusing on motivation and emotions. According to Thatcher and others, reversal theory is well suited to describe, explain, and predict emotional changes that are experienced. It can be summarised as a theory that focuses on people's mental life and tries to understand their behaviour in terms of meanings they place on things. This results in them viewing and acting in the world in differing ways at different times, and highlights the individual's changeability and flexibility. This image displays the four categories, their states, and the outcome or aim of each state of the reversal theory. The two states in each pair are bipolar opposites, meaning only one state from each pair can be operative at any one time. Reversal theory proposes that each individual will demonstrate a tendency towards one of the motivational states in each pair. An example of reversal theory is if a student is misbehaving in class, they are in the rebellious state and are most likely seeking freedom in what is normally considered an environment where most people would conform to fit in. Another example is an athlete at training. If they are actively mucking around, they may be in the paratelic state of means end, that is, not being focused and their mind is being scattered. When the coach instructs them to sprint a lap of the oval, they will switch to the telic state as they will be more focused on the task at hand. This theory implies that the human personality is extremely versatile and many of our behaviours are dependent upon the environment and conditions around us.
From the data pulled from Paula's race, we can see that at 1 minute pre-race, Paula's cortisol levels have dropped from 0.6 to 0.4, indicating that she is beginning to feel less stressed about the race. Her heart rate variability spikes from 0.3 to 0.64. Then, when looking at the prefrontal cortex activity, we can see that both the left side and the right side are sitting at the same level, indicating her emotions are stable. This is where Paula is trying to make concentrated efforts to listen to her coxswain and be ready for the start of the race. At 5 minutes into the race, we can see that Paula's cortisol levels are continuing to drop steadily, indicating her stress levels are also dropping steadily. Her heart rate variability is still plateaued at 4.5. When we look at the activity within the prefrontal cortex, we can see that Paula's right side has a small spike at the 5 minute mark of the race. This shows negative emotion and is linked to the story by where she is beginning to dread what her coxswain is calling out. which is where they need to bring the boat up into a sprint. Then when we look at the left side of the cortex, we can see that this is dominant at this stage. This is because Paula has switched from paratelic state to telic state, indicating she has now begun to fully focus and relax on the race at hand. As we move to 10 minutes post-race, we can see that Paula's cortisol levels are back to where they began at the start of the race. Her heart rate variability now begins to drop from 0.55 to 0.44. When we look at the prefrontal cortex activity, we can see that the right side of the cortex has continued to rise from 10 to 11. This indicates that Paula is overcome with negative emotions from the race, and the fact that she continues to blame herself for her crew losing the race. She is unable to speak with Jill due to this negative emotion build-up. Then as we look at the left side of the cortex, we can see that it has dropped significantly from the 5-minute mark, which then plateaus, indicating Paula has hardly any positive emotions from the outcome of the race. This build-up of negative emotion after the race was a deciding factor to Paula quitting the rowing team just 1 week after. Focusing on the means-end domain of reversal theory, there are 2 states that best describe Paula's behaviour, the paratelic and telic states. In the paratelic state, the individual is not focused and there is a lot going on in their mind. In the telic state, they are focused on the task at hand. It is quite easy to switch between these states regardless of what you are doing, and the longer you are in one state, the easier it is to switch to another. This explains why Paula found it easy to switch from paratelic to telic at the 5-minute mark of the race.
Looking at the physical activity graph, we can see there's a clear decrease in child participation. This could be due to the physical and emotional changes that they are experiencing. As a result of these changes, children can potentially experience a lack of motivation or self-esteem and therefore shy away from participating in physical activity. Looking at the graph from a reversal theory perspective, one can explain the decrease in child participation from a telic mindset. This person believes that sport is too serious and they place unnecessary pressure on themselves to perform well. Therefore, these people might decide to take up a less anxiety-producing activity. An athlete with a negative mindset may become frustrated if they don't see improvement, and their unwillingness to listen to others could be a cause of their lack of improvement. This could lead to them being unable to test their boundaries of what they can and can't do. If a person with a sympathetic mindset undertakes an individual sport where they are put into a situation where they have to win, this stress could lead to them not enjoying the activity and therefore not playing to their full potential. The lack of success could hinder their development and could be a reason that participation declines during the week. An athlete with an autic mindset competing in a team sport may not be satisfied with their teammates' performance and therefore become frustrated. This frustration could account for their lack of enjoyment, and this could lead to a decline in participation.